Chapter 34-48, Emotionless Ice Sculpture. As soon as Little Nine finished speaking, she felt the coldness emanating from a certain person. The person said pitifully, "It's fine if you don't want to. I don't usually beg others for things that I can do myself." Little Nine stretched out her fleshy claws to grab the ribs that were furthest away from her. As the distance was too far, and her small arms were short, she was practically sprawled on the table. Even the small stool under her feet was on the verge of collapsing. Seeing that Little Nine was about to fall to the ground, a certain someone grabbed Little Nine by her collar and lifted her up. Little Nine immediately struggled like a little bastard. "Put me down, I want to eat meat." "You want to eat back in your own room." A certain someone grabbed Little Nine and directly threw her into her own cabin, then slammed the door shut with a bang. Little Nine, a certain honored guest, returned to his own cabin and saw the mess on the ground. His gaze was slightly cold. He waved his sleeves, and even the carpet on the ground was replaced with a new set. Only then did he continue to meditate and cultivate. After a short while, a certain honored guest felt that there was someone peeping at the door. He frowned slightly. He didn't need to look to know that the person peeping was definitely that little rascal. Little Nine, who was peeping through the gap of the door, cursed silently. It was nothing more than a heartbreaker, a scumbag, and someone without a conscience. After cursing for a while, she saw that the certain someone was not paying attention to her. She could only take her short legs and return to her cabin. This fellow was so frustrated that she made herself look like a little kitten. She was also unable to get that heartbreaker to feed her. It was as if she had thrown a stone at her own feet. She was extremely depressed. However, very quickly, a crafty look flashed across this fellow's eyes. "Humph. If you don't feed me, then I'll let you sleep with me." After Little Nine had washed her face, she pushed open the cabin door of a certain someone with her short legs. A certain someone finally opened his eyes and looked at her. "What's the matter?" Little Nine staggered a few steps and then pounced on a certain someone. A certain someone wanted to slap her away, but looking at her small body, he reckoned that she would be seriously injured if he slapped her. He could only use his hand to support her. "What are you doing?" "Big brother Bei Ming, I can't sleep. Sing a lullaby for me," Little Nine said as she blinked her starry eyes. A certain someone's expression turned even colder. "If you can't sleep, then cultivate." Little Nine, damn it. This psychopath wasn't just any ordinary difficult person to deal with. Little Nine pursed her lips, sat down cross-legged next to a certain someone, and began to cultivate. Of course, this fellow's intentions weren't in the wine. After a short while, his body fell in the direction of a certain someone. Seeing that he was about to lean on a certain someone's body, a certain someone stood up and changed places. The miserable Little Nine fell to the ground with a thud. Little Nine was so angry. She punched the ground a few times with her small fists and pointed at a certain someone with an aggrieved expression. "Are you still human? I'm so young now, and you're still bullying me like this." The certain someone acted as if he didn't hear her and didn't even look at Little Nine. Little Nine was instantly discouraged. Talking to an emotionless ice sculpture was simply a waste of time. "Fuck, go to sleep." Little Nine took out a blanket and pillow and fell asleep on the ground. Soon, she fell asleep soundly. After a certain someone felt that Little Nine's breathing was stable, he opened his eyes and glanced at her. Then, he closed his eyes and continued to cultivate. The next morning, Little Nine was alive and kicking again. "Prince Charming, where's the ghost face orchid? How long will it take us to get there?" This guy was too lazy to call him daddy and brother Bei Ming to tease a certain someone. Chapter 34-49, Ghost Face Orchid. It is said that there are ghost face orchids in the Orchid Valley. "We will reach the Orchid Valley in about 10 days, Bei Ming said faintly. Little Nine took out a piece of sugar ball and threw it into her mouth. She asked vaguely, "Then where is the Orchid Valley?" Is it dangerous? The Orchid Valley is in the territory of the first-class country, Juntian country. Di Biming did not say anything about whether it was dangerous or not. Obviously, he felt that there was no need to answer Little Nine's question. Little Nine curled her lips. So what if her spiritual power was high? Tui. Sooner or later, she would also become powerful. In the next few days, Little Nine provoked a certain someone with different tricks. Unfortunately, the certain someone was not moved at all and allowed Little Nine to play tricks. If it was an ordinary person, they would have been discouraged long ago. However, Hei Shinjio was obviously not an ordinary person. This fellow was stimulated by his fighting spirit and was simply not tired of it. On this day, they finally arrived at the entrance of the Yulon Valley. Hei Shinjio followed Di Biming out of the flying spirit tool. When she saw that there were many people gathered in the distance, she could not help but wonder, why were there so many people? Could it be that they were all here to look for the ghost face orchid? Why didn't they enter? At this moment, those people's gazes were also looking at Di Biming and Hei Shinjio. To be exact, they were looking at Di Biming. Where did this young man come from? Why was his aura so shocking? What surprised them was that they could not see through Di Biming's cultivation, which meant that this young man's spiritual power was higher than theirs. Especially some of the women, who were looking at Di Biming with infatuation. Such a handsome and noble man was the best choice for their husband. They had come to the Yulon Valley for the right reason. Hei Shinjio was furious when she saw the infatuated gazes of those women. What the fuck, where were they looking at? This was her man. A bunch of shameless flirtatious bitches. If she had known this would happen, she would have let the pretty boy eat a disguise pill. What a miscalculation. This guy rolled his eyes and hugged Di Biming's thigh. Daddy, hug. Daddy. Disappointment appeared on the faces of those women. So he had already married and had children. What a pity. Di Biming's gaze was slightly cold as he stared at Little Nine who was begging for a hug. In the end, he still carried her. He was also very surprised to see so many people at the entrance of the Yulon Valley. He had originally planned to pick a few ghost face orchids and leave. He did not expect that there would be complications. What were these people gathered here for? Just as Di Biming was thinking, a woman walked over shyly and timidly. Young master, are you also here for the ghost face orchids? Di Biming faintly acknowledged and coldly said, why don't you guys go in? The woman was clearly a little dizzy from Di Biming's voice. After a while, she said, young master, you might not know this, but this Yulon Valley is not always open. You need a specific time to enter. In less than an hour, the Yulon Valley will open. Di Biming nodded his head indifferently and did not say anything else. When the woman saw that Di Biming did not speak, she continued, although there is a ghost face orchid in the Yulon Valley, the ghost face orchid is different from other herbs. It is difficult for ordinary people to find its traces, so even if you can enter the Yulon Valley, you might not be able to find the ghost face orchid. When the woman said this, her gaze turned to look at Di Biming. She said with a hint of self-satisfaction, however, our Juntian Kingdom's imperial clan has a treasure to look for the ghost face orchid. Young master will follow this princess in a while. You will definitely be able to find the ghost face orchid. Chapter 3450 The people from Zhongli's hateful palace had also arrived. Princess. Little Nine narrowed her eyes. No wonder the others seemed to be afraid of this woman. So she was the princess of the June Heaven Kingdom. However, this princess was really shameless. When the other women heard that her gigolo was already a father, they knew that it was difficult and retreated. However, this one came forward. Could it be that she wanted the gigolo to divorce his wife and marry someone else? Although Little Nine wanted to curse the princess in her heart, she thought of what she said. If she couldn't bear it, she would mess up the big plan. It was better to get the ghost face orchid first. When Little Nine was thinking about it, she heard Di Biming say coldly, "No need." Little Nine's heart was a little complicated. On one hand, she was satisfied with the cold attitude of a certain lord towards the other girls. On the other hand, she was a little annoyed at the one-track mind of a certain lord. No matter what, she had to get the ghost face orchid first. There was a moment of gloominess on the princess' face, but soon a smile appeared on her face. "Since young master is confident, then Ziyu will not disturb you." After Princess Ziyu finished speaking, she did not continue to pester her and returned to her own team. An hour later, the thick fog at the entrance of the Yulon Valley dispersed, revealing the entrance of the valley. Princess Ziyu was the first to walk in, and the people behind her also followed her in. Little Nine whispered into a certain venerable's ear, "Why didn't you agree with Princess Ziyu just now? This way, we can save a lot of trouble." A certain venerable was a little uncomfortable with the hot air that Little Nine exhaled. He tilted his head slightly and said, "If you can't find it, just kill them and snatch the ghost face orchid." Little Nine, all right, there was nothing that could not be solved by snatching. Of course, the prerequisite was that you were strong enough. Just as a certain venerable was about to carry Little Nine into the Yulon Valley, another group of people came from the distance. Although Little Nine could not see through their spiritual power, it was clear that their spiritual power was much higher than Princess Ziyu and the others. Little Nine caught a glimpse of the symbol on the lower right corner of their clothes and her heart tightened. The Li Hate Palace. They were actually people from the Li Hate Palace. They were also here for the ghost face orchid. Although the ghost face orchid was precious, the Li Hate Palace could definitely demand it from the Jun Tian kingdom. Why would they need to personally send people here? Could it be that there were other treasures in this orchid valley? Just as Yun Chujio was pondering, the people from the Li Hate Palace had already arrived in front of them. Their gazes paused on Di Biming for a moment and did not say anything else. They quickly entered the orchid valley. Di Biming's eyes were also slightly surprised. After the people from the Lihan Palace had left, he carried Little Nine and entered the Yulon Valley. Once they entered the Yulon Valley, Yun Chujio finally understood the origins of the Yulon Valley. There were all kinds of orchids everywhere. Although the varieties were not particularly precious, they still looked very pleasing to the eye. Di Biming carried Little Nine and walked for a while. He frowned slightly. He did not expect the Yulon Valley to be so big. If they continued to walk aimlessly, they would probably return empty-handed. Hence, he followed the trail of footsteps and chased after Princess Ziyu. Although Di Biming was carrying Little Nine, his speed was still very fast. He could see Princess Ziyu and the others from afar, but he did not see the people from the Li Hate Palace. However, Di Biming and Yun Chujio's priority was to pick the ghost face orchid, so they did not pay too much attention to the whereabouts of the people from the Li Hate Palace. Princess Ziyu glanced at Di Biming, who was walking over, and felt a little pleased. She had rejected him so readily before, but now he was still following them. Chapter 34-51 My father's surname is Bei. Princess Ziyu's gaze was infatuated as she looked at Di Biming, who was approaching her. She had never seen such an outstanding man, especially that kind of unapproachable aura. It made her very infatuated. Even if this man already had a wife and children, she would still want him. As for his wife and this little bastard, she would just find an opportunity to kill them. Although Princess Ziyu was scheming evil thoughts in her heart, the words she said were very understanding. This young master is really a coincidence. We meet again. Why don't we look for the ghost face orchid together? I have many people here, and I can help you look after your daughter. Di Biming nodded slightly. Princess Ziyu immediately let her subordinates carry Little Jiu, but Di Biming said coldly, "No need." He Xinjiu was quite satisfied with Di Biming's actions. If he dared to let others carry her, she would cry for him to see. "May I know how to address you, young master?" Princess Ziyu asked shyly. "My father's surname is Bei, and his name is Bayu. He's a big fish. It's the kind of fish that can be eaten. But if you don't eat it well, you'll get fishy all over. Little Jiao said softly. Di Baiming's face stiffened, and he tightened his grip on He Xinjiu. Princess Ziyu felt that the little girl's words had a hidden meaning, and there was a hint of mockery in them. She could not help but feel angry in her heart, and there was a trace of viciousness in her eyes as she looked at little Nine. It would be better to find an opportunity to kill this little bastard in this Yulon Valley, so as to avoid ruining her good deed. Even so, she still said with a slightly red face, "Young Master Bei, ghost face orchids usually live in dark and damp places. We found ghost face orchids not far ahead, let's go and take a look." Di Baiming hummed and followed Princess Ziyu and the others. After walking for about 2 hours, they came to a shrub. This place was close to a stream, and there were many withered branches and leaves under the low shrub. This was the most suitable place for ghost face orchids to grow. He Xinjiu was puzzled. Didn't Princess Ziyu say that she had a treasure to look for ghost face orchids? What kind of treasure was it? Just as He Xinjiu was puzzled, Princess Ziyu took out a bead that was emitting a faint blue light. Princess Ziyu explained, "Young Master Bei, the ghost face orchid is the best at disguising itself. It's very difficult to be discovered by others. However, the blue light emitted by the orchid bead in my hand can easily discover the ghost face orchid." Di Baiming nodded indifferently and did not say anything. Princess Ziyu was slightly disappointed. This young Master Bei was too cold. It was probably because of the little bastard in his arms. He really deserved to die. Princess Ziyu held the orchid pearl in her hand and searched through the bushes. Unfortunately, she did not find anything. Someone sighed, "This ghost face orchid is getting harder and harder to find. Could it be that I have to return empty-handed again? Yeah, it's been many years since we found any traces of ghost face orchids. What the hell? Where did those ghost face orchids go?" Princess Ziyu heard her subordinate's complaints and coughed unhappily. Everyone immediately fell silent. "Let's go to the ghost cave and try our luck. Maybe we'll find something there," Princess Ziyu said as she glanced at little Nine in Di Baiming's arms. Immediately, an elderly woman advised, "Princess, the ghost cave is extremely dangerous. Although the ghost face orchid is precious, it's not worth the risk. Let's just forget about it." Princess Ziyu said unhappily, "Granny Lu, I've made up my mind. You don't have to say it." Chapter 3452, The Ghost is Here. Granny Lu saw that Princess Ziyu's attitude was firm, so she did not dare to say anything more. Therefore, the group left the bushes and headed towards the ghost cave. He Xinjiu naturally did not ignore the malicious gaze Princess Ziyu gave her. She sneered in her heart. Was she trying to stir up trouble in the ghost cave and kill her? TSK, she was really courting death. Not to mention that she had a gigolo by her side. Even if she did not have a gigolo, she still had many ways to kill this little bitch. Thinking of the gigolo, He Xinjiu felt a little comforted. No matter what, this heartless person had been hugging her for 4 hours and had no intention of letting go of her, even though it was a little cold. But at least he knew how to protect her. This guy rolled his eyes. "Daddy, it's so tiring to carry me all the time. Let them carry me with the pole." Princess Ziyu could not wait to have such an opportunity. She immediately ordered her subordinates to take out the pole. Di Baiming glanced at He Xinjiu and saw that her eyes were full of cunning. After a moment of silence, he put her on the pole. He Xinjiu sat on the pole and took out some melon seeds. She was munching on them while humming a tune, looking very relaxed. Seeing that Di Baiming had finally regained his freedom, Princess Ziyu immediately went over and wanted to talk to him. She did not expect Di Baiming to flash to the side of the pole. Obviously, he was not going to say anything to her. Princess Ziyu was so angry that she gritted her teeth. In her heart, she became even more determined to kill little Nine. After walking for about 4 hours, they finally arrived at the entrance of the ghost cave. Hei Shinjio looked at the footprints on the ground and her heart moved. It seemed that the people from the Li Hate Palace had already entered the ghost cave. What secrets did this ghost cave contain? The ghost cave was very narrow and could only allow one person to pass through. Princess Ziyu gave the 2 people who were carrying the pole a look. The meaning was obvious. She wanted to find a chance to kill little Nine. Unexpectedly, Di Baiming stretched out his arm and picked little Nine up from the pole. He was the first to enter the ghost cave. Princess Ziyu gritted her teeth. She hated him in her heart. Anyway, there were plenty of opportunities inside. Let's see if you can always protect her. Little Nine hugged Di Baiming's neck and looked at Princess Ziyu, who was following closely behind. She secretly mouthed, "Fuck, crazy." Princess Ziyu was so angry that she almost vomited blood. This bastard. Little Nine saw that Princess Ziyu was so angry that her face turned red. A sweet smile appeared on her face and she kissed Di Baiming's face. Di Baiming's body stiffened. He paused for a moment and then continued to walk forward. Hei Shinjo stopped when she saw the situation. She did not continue to flirt with a certain someone but instead looked at this so-called ghost cave. The ground was very slippery and there were some moss growing on it. There was nothing special about it. Of course, it might be because this was just the entrance, and the deeper one went, the more dangerous it would be. Princess Ziyu finally calmed down and said gently, "Young Master Bei, the reason why this ghost cave is called a ghost cave is because there are many rarely seen ferocious demonic beasts and it is said that it is haunted. Of course, it is very likely that this is just a rumor. People are just trying to scare themselves." Before Princess Ziyu finished her sentence, she heard little Nine scream in fear, "Ghosts! There are ghosts! The ghosts are coming!" Princess Ziyu and the others were scared out of their wits and wanted to retreat. However, the tunnel was too narrow. As they pushed and shoved, a few of them squeezed into the tunnel and made a mess. At this moment, everyone heard little Nine say with a smile, "Ha ha ha, I'm joking with you. Isn't it fun?" Chapter 34-53 My father is a slave to his wife. Princess Ziyu and the others almost died from anger. This little girl was really too wicked. She was already scared to death in this ghost cave, but she actually intentionally scared them. She was really crafty. Yun Chujia's smile was extremely bright. She stole a glance at Di Baiming's deep eyes and saw that there was actually a hint of a smile in them. She was stunned in her heart, but when she looked again, she still looked like an ancient well without any ripples. This fellow curled his lips in his heart. He wanted to laugh but did not. He was not afraid of stifling his internal injuries. Thinking about internal injuries, Hei Shinjio thought wickedly. Could it be that this gigolo had sealed his 7 emotions and 6 desires because he could not eat her for a long time? Otherwise, it would indeed be easy to stifle his internal injuries. However, thinking about it, it was really tragic. Fortunately, the lifespan of people in the towering sky continent was more than 1,000 years. She was still considered a young and beautiful girl. Otherwise, it would really be fatal if she did not come to Kueishui from the beginning to the end. After walking for more than an hour, the passage gradually became spacious. In the end, if it were not for the stone walls covering the several hundred feet high place, they would really think that this was a valley and not a cave. However, there was no light source in the cave. Fortunately, everyone had night luminescent pearls on them, so they didn't delay their walk. They found some corpses of demonic beasts one after another. The blood on them had not dried yet. Apparently, someone had just left here. Princess Ziyu couldn't help but ask in surprise, could it be that someone has come in? Who exactly is it? Hei Shinjio could not help but twitch her lips. Only now did she realize that someone had entered. They were truly stupid. It was rare for Di Biming to open his mouth and say, "We met people from the Li Hate Palace at the entrance of the valley. These demonic beasts must have been killed by them." People from the Li Hate Palace? Princess Ziyu suddenly raised her voice. What are they doing here? Could it be that they are also here to find the ghost face orchid? If we find the ghost face orchids, we will naturally have to offer them to the Li Hate Palace. There is no need for them to personally come and pick the ghost face orchids, right? No one replied to Princess Ziyu's words because they were also puzzled. Nanny Lu once again advised, "Princess, since the people from the Li Hate Palace are in front, let's go back." Princess Ziyu glanced at the expressionless Di Biming. "Young Master Bei, what do you think?" Di Biming did not say anything and continued walking forward. Little Nine said softly, "You can go back now. My father loves his wife very much and will not marry anyone else, so it's useless for you to follow him. Why bother? Let me tell you, my father is a wife slave. He washes his wife's feet, massages her shoulders, and massages her legs every day. At night, he even sings lullabies to her. He doesn't even want her to walk on her own and carries her around every day." The jealousy in Princess Ziyu's heart grew like poisonous weeds. She had no intention of leaving in the first place. After hearing He Xinjia's words, it was even more impossible for her to leave. She was definitely going to take this man. He Xinjiu saw that Princess Ziyu still had no intention of leaving. She thought to herself, "This can't be blamed on me. I've already let her go. If she still doesn't leave, then she's courting death." He Xinjia's attention was on Princess Ziyu, but she didn't notice that when she said those words, a certain honored guest's expression was as cold as ice. He reckoned that if the situation wasn't wrong, he would definitely teach little Jiu a lesson. The deeper they went, the more corpses the demonic beasts had. He Xinjiu couldn't help but grumble, "What a waste. These can all be sold for money." A certain lord's body stiffened. In his memory, this little rascal seemed to have a lot of money. Why was he so obsessed with money? Chapter 34-54 When Princess Ziyu heard Yun Chujia's words, her heart was filled with joy. This little bastard's words, did it mean that young Master Bai's family background was not very good? As long as she became her prince consort, she would have countless spirit stones. Who knows, she might even be able to move young Master Bai's heart. When He Xinjiu saw Princess Ziyu's face filled with infatuation, she could not help but feel disdain in her heart. Have you never seen a man before? To actually covet her man, how shameless. Fuck, if it wasn't for Guai Chao causing trouble, the gigolo would have long been hers. Monkeys could give birth to several of them. That damned Go Weiba. Guai Chao in his dantian, there were always a few days every month when he had to be scolded. He was already used to it. As he walked, a faint blue light came from the front. It looked similar to the light emitted by Princess Ziyu's pearl. Everyone quickened their steps, and soon, sounds of fighting could be heard from the front. With the faint blue light, they could see that the people of the Li Hate Palace were fighting with several giant snakes. Heavens! It's a 59th level dark poison giant snake. Princess, let's retreat quickly. Nanny Lu said in terror. The 59th level dark poison giant snake was equivalent to those at the 3rd to 4th level of psychic power. Although there were also people at the 4th level of psychic power among the people Princess Ziyu brought, there were dozens of dark poisoned giant snakes. They would definitely not benefit from it. Just as Princess Ziyu was hesitating, she heard someone in front of her shout, "Since they are from the Jun Tian kingdom, why aren't you coming over to help? Do you want to leave them to die?" Princess Ziyu did not dare to leave even if she wanted to. Even if she was a princess of the Jun Tian kingdom, she did not dare to offend the Lihan palace. Princess Ziyu could only leave a few people to protect herself and let the others come forward to help. Di Biming stood to the side with little Nine in his arms and could only watch indifferently. A cold glint flashed across Di Biming's eyes as he coldly asked Princess Ziyu, "There should be ghost face orchids in the imperial palace of your Jun Tian kingdom, right?" Princess Ziyu did not expect Di Biming to take the initiative to speak to her. She was simply too excited and did not have the time to lie. She honestly said, "Young Master Bei, we have not found ghost face orchids for several years. The ones we picked previously were all given to the Li Hate Palace, so there are no ghost face orchids in our imperial palace." Di Biming frowned slightly. It would have been fine if there were ghost face orchids in the Jun Tian Kingdom's imperial palace. He could just force the Jun Tian Kingdom's emperor to take them out, but the Li Hen Palace was a little difficult to deal with. Although his spiritual power was not low now, he still did not have much confidence in forcefully breaking into the Li Hen Palace. It seemed that he could only try his luck in the ghost cave. If he really could not do it, he could only go to the Li Hen Palace. Just as Di Biming was deep in thought, a giant poisonous snake suddenly crawled towards them quickly. It spat out its scarlet tongue, looking rather terrifying. Princess Ziyu cried out in shock, "You guys, quick, kill it." Princess Ziyu's subordinates immediately went forward to stop the giant poisonous snake, and the two sides engaged in a battle. Di Biming was still holding on to little Nine as he watched coldly from the side. He had no intention of extending his hand at all. Princess Ziyu's subordinates spent quite a while before they finally killed the giant poisonous snake. However, they looked at Di Biming with disdain. Although this man's spiritual power seemed to be quite high, he was probably just putting on a show. Otherwise, why didn't he extend his hand? He was probably afraid that he would be exposed if he extended his hand, right? Princess Ziyu was also a little displeased. Firstly, he actually only cared about that bastard of his and did not save him. Secondly, he was probably just a flowery pillow and did not have any real abilities. Chapter 34:55 What a cute little thing. Princess Ziyu's thoughts suddenly changed a little. The sky-high continent respected the strong. No matter how handsome this man was, he would still be looked down upon by others if he did not have any abilities. Her gaze towards Di Biming immediately became less heated. She had really lost her mind just now. She had actually entered the ghost cave for him. She really deserved to die. After another 2 hours, those giant poisonous snakes were finally killed. The air was filled with the smell of blood. A small leader of the Li Hen Palace walked over. He first nodded slightly to Princess Ziyu, then his gaze landed on the spotless Di Biming. He sneered a few times, then said, "This young master is really calm. Our lives were hanging by a thread just now, yet you just watched coldly from the side. Since that's the case, help us scout ahead." Di Biming slightly curled the corner of his mouth. A trace of sternness flashed in his eyes, but he didn't say anything. He lifted his leg and walked forward. It was obvious that he had agreed to scout ahead for everyone. If it was before, Princess Ziyu would definitely put in a few good words for them. But now, her thoughts had changed, so she didn't say anything. Instead, she wanted to leave. But that small leader said, "Since we're here, let's go together." Princess Ziyu didn't dare to say anything else and could only follow him. Hei Xinjiu held Di Biming's neck and her eyes flashed as she looked at Di Biming's eyes. She was a little nervous at first, but when she saw the calmness in Di Biming's eyes, she immediately knew that the gigolo must have used these people to find the ghost face orchid, which was why he didn't kill them, otherwise, none of these little dregs would be able to live. After walking for a short while, they found a huge nest. There were some demon beast eggs inside, and some of them had already begun to hatch. It was clearly the nest of those giant dark poison snakes from before. No wonder those giant dark poison snakes had come out in full force. They were probably afraid that the people of the Li Hate Palace would harm their young. The people of the Li Hen Palace put away those demonic beast eggs and urged Di Biming to continue walking forward. After walking for some distance, they heard the roars of beasts. 2 giant blue demonic tigers blocked their way. Hei Shinjiu widened her eyes and said in surprise, "What a beautiful kitten. This is the first time I've seen a blue kitten. Daddy, I want to play with them for a while." The 2 blue tigers, Princess Ziyu snorted coldly, "These are level 61 blue tigers, not kittens. You want to play with them? Are you courting death?" Yun Chujio ignored her and looked at the 2 blue tigers instead. She said softly, "Kittens, run. These people are very fierce. They are not as kind as my father and I are. They will kill you." A trace of confusion flashed across the 2 blue tigers' huge eyes. This little human girl actually advised them to run. She actually did not want them to be killed. Since that was the case, then she would eat the others first and then her. When the 2 blue tigers thought of this, they actually bypassed Di Baiming and Yun Chujio, who were at the front, and pounced on the people behind them. Those people felt as if their hearts were going to explode. Were these 2 giant blue tigers blind? Why didn't they attack the father and daughter? Why did they have to attack them? Hei Shinjiu took out a spirit fruit and said vaguely while chewing, "Daddy, those 2 kittens look so cute when they fight. I've never seen such a cute little thing." Everyone, cute. Little thing. Damn it, not only were the 2 giant blue tigers blind, but this little girl was even more blind. Chapter 3456, Blue Bats. Although the 2 indigo tiger spirit ranks were not low, the Li Hate Palace and the Jun Tian Kingdom combined had several dozen people. They were soon at a disadvantage. Little Nine chewed on a fruit as she shouted, "Little things, quickly run, or you'll really lose your lives." The 2 indigo tigers looked at each other and then ran away. The people of the Li Hate Palace, Princess Ziyu, and the others did not want to waste time with the demonic beasts, so no one chased after them. The leader of the Li Hate Palace urged Di Baiming to continue exploring. Di Baiming carried Little Nine and continued to walk forward leisurely. The deeper they went, the brighter the blue light became. Hei Shinjiu was very curious. What on earth could emit such a strong light? There must be a good treasure. Just as Hei Shinjiu was thinking about it, countless black shadows suddenly flew towards them. They were so fast that no one could see what was flying towards them. Di Baiming did not attack those things. Instead, he waved his sleeves to form a spiritual energy shield, protecting him and little Jiu within it. Hei Shinjiu blinked her eyes and looked at those things that were continuously attacking the spiritual energy shield. Only when she got closer did she see clearly that they were countless blue vampire bats. Their bodies were emitting a faint blue light. Hei Shinjiu was shocked. Could it be that the blue light that they saw was emitted by these bats? Heavens, the light was so bright. How many of these bats were there? Princess Ziyu and the others had already fought with those bats. From time to time, they could hear the screams of cultivators and bats. However, it seemed that these bats alone were not a match for Princess Ziyu and the others. As expected, after a fierce battle, Princess Ziyu and the others finally killed all the blue bats. However, they had also lost a few people. When they saw Di Baiming and Xiaoxiao's spotless appearance, they were both puzzled and indignant. That man had only formed a spiritual energy barrier, but the blue bats actually did not break through. But that was also true. They had attracted the bats' attention, so he naturally took advantage of them. At this time, Princess Ziyu really wanted to retreat, but before she could say anything, she was frightened by the little leader's cold gaze and didn't dare to say anything more. In her heart, she was angry at Di Baiming. If it wasn't for him, why would she enter this ghost cave on impulse? He and that little bastard deserved to die. This time, Di Baiming did not use his little leader to urge him. He carried Little Nine and continued to walk forward. Not long after, another group of blue bats flew over. Just like before, Di Biming still maintained his spiritual energy barrier and calmly watched the show from the side. After Princess Ziyu and the others fought, a few more people died and were injured. Princess Ziyu did not care whether she was afraid or not, she said with a sharp voice, "No. Those blue lights in front must be emitted by these blue bats. If we continue to move forward, we will die. I want to go back." Those people from the June Heaven Kingdom did not want to move forward for a long time. When they heard Princess Ziyu's words, they wanted to protect Princess Ziyu and retreat. The leader of the Lihan Palace sneered, "Princess Ziyu, if you leave now, I guarantee that you will be expelled by the imperial family tomorrow, and your followers will also be wiped out." Princess Ziyu and her followers felt a chill in their hearts. They absolutely did not doubt the words of the leader. Although the June Heaven Kingdom was a first-class country, if the Lihate Palace blamed them, the emperor would definitely sacrifice them. Even if Princess Ziyu was a princess, they would also be abandoned. Chapter 3457, Blue Glaze. Princess Ziyu was being threatened. She could only say hesitantly, "My lord, it's not that I don't want to serve the Lihate Palace. It's just that there are so many blue bats. I'm afraid we won't be a match for them. Moreover, will there be ghost face orchids here?" The leader sneered, "Who says we're looking for ghost face orchids? There's no need for you to say anything. Just follow us. If we succeed, there won't be any lack of benefits for you." At this moment, Princess Ziyu naturally did not dare to say anything else. She hesitantly agreed. Di Biming slightly frowned. If there were no ghost face orchids here, wouldn't he have wasted all his efforts? However, if they could obtain what the Lihate Palace was looking for, it wouldn't be too bad. Perhaps they could use it to exchange for ghost face orchids. After a few more waves of blue bat attacks, nearly half of the people were killed or injured. Only then did they arrive at the end of the ghost cave. Everyone was stunned by the magnificent scene before them. They did not know what kind of or the stone wall was made of, but it was emitting a faint blue light. Countless ghost face orchids were attached to the stone wall. Under the blue light, they looked like they were made of glass. The leader of the Lihate Palace was ecstatic. "We found it. We finally found it. This is the blue marble. Quick! Cut these blue marble carefully and take them away." Blue marble? Hei Shinjo blinked her eyes. She had never heard of it and did not know what it was used for. Could it be that it was just because of its good looks? Di Biming's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. He knew about the blue marble, but he did not expect that there was such a thing in the towering sky continent. The blue marble had a special effect, which was to dispel the inner demons and prevent cultivation deviation. The blue charm glaze could be said to be a treasure to those with profound cultivation. The more profound the cultivation, the harder it was to dispel the inner demons. With this blue charm glaze, one could at least prevent one from going berserk. However, Di Biming had no interest in this blue charm glaze. He was only interested in the ghost face orchid that was attached to the blue charm glaze. He said indifferently, "I need some ghost face orchids. I'll pick a few, and you guys can cut the blue charm glaze." The reason why Di Biming said this was because he didn't want to cause trouble for no reason. After he obtained the ghost face orchids, he could send this little rascal back to the East Phoenix Kingdom. This way, he could go back to his own matters. Who would have thought that the little leader of the Lihate Palace would sneer again and again? "You want the ghost face orchids? With just you?" "To tell you the truth, the reason why I let you live until now is because I want you to scout the way for us. Go, kill him." The little leader waved his hand, and the people of the Lihate Palace and Princess Ziyu immediately revealed fierce killing intent. Princess Ziyu snorted coldly and said nothing. A good-for-nothing who didn't know what was good for him could just die. Di Biming's expression didn't change in the slightest. He just put little 9 on the ground and said indifferently, "Go and pick the ghost face orchid." Hei Shinjiu was very confident in her man's perversion. She immediately ran to the stone wall to pick the ghost face orchid with her short legs, as if she did not know that the people behind her were going to kill them. Seeing Di Biming ignoring them, the leader said viciously, "Don't just stand there. Kill him right now." Immediately, 3 people rushed towards Di Biming. Although they knew that Di Biming's spiritual power was higher than theirs, they felt that it was easy for 3 people to kill him. Almost no one saw how Di Biming moved. The 3 people had already fallen to the ground and died. Chapter 3458, Shadow Transmission Stone. The little leader and the others were stunned. This man was actually so strong. However, at this point, they could only fight to the death. The little leader shouted in exasperation, "What are you all standing there for? Attack! Attack together! Kill him!" Everyone charged towards Di Biming. Princess Ziyu's heart was very complicated. She was filled with regret and hatred. She looked at little Nine who was picking the ghost face orchid. As long as she caught this bastard, that man could only surrender obediently. Hence, she took advantage of the moment when Di Biming was surrounded by everyone and leaped towards little Nine. Before her foot landed on the ground, an ice arrow pierced her forehead. She tried her best to look to the other side and saw that most of the people had already died. Even those who were still struggling on the brink of death would not be able to escape the fate of death. At this moment, Princess Ziyu truly regretted it. If she had known this would happen, she would have left when that little bastard told her to leave. One wrong step, one wrong step. The head of the Li Hate Palace was buzzing. It was over. None of them would survive today. If she had known this would happen, she would have let this man pick a few ghost face orchids. While the head was in a daze, the rest of the people were all killed by Di Biming. He gritted his teeth. Even if he did not survive today, this man and that little bastard would not be able to live. He took out a dark black stone from his storage ring and held it in his hand. When Di Biming saw the stone, his heart trembled. Almost instantly, a mask appeared on his face, then, an ice arrow shot into the little leader's forehead. Di Biming struck the stone with his palm, and instantly, the stone turned into powder. When little Nine heard the sound, she turned her head and saw the black powder flying in all directions. She couldn't help but ask curiously, "Male God, what is that thing?" Di Biming took off the mask on his face and said with a cold voice, "Shadow Stone." Before he died, he probably already teleported the situation here back to the Li Hate Palace. However, it's a good thing that there's only your back. Moreover, my true body also put on the mask at the first moment, so I shouldn't have teleported my true Bodis appearance over. However, it's not good to stay here for long. The people of the Li Hate Palace will soon send people to the valley entrance to intercept us. We must leave as soon as possible. Yun Chujo nodded. She released 5 puppets to help her pick the ghost face orchids. These things were hard to come by, so she had to get more of them. Finally, she managed to pick most of the ghost face orchids on the stone wall. This fellow took out a large kitchen knife and began to cut the blue-colored glass. Since this thing was something the hateful palace wanted, it must be something good. They couldn't let it go to their advantage. When Di Biming saw Yun Chujio chop at the blue-colored glass, he didn't say anything. Although time was of the essence, it wasn't too late. Moreover, this blue-colored glass was very rare, so it was fine to get some. When he saw that little Nine was having a hard time, he simply took the large kitchen knife from her hand and helped her chop. Very quickly, the two chopped off a large piece of blue-colored glass and left the ghost cave. After carrying Yun Chujio out of the Orchid Valley, Di Biming rode on his flying spirit tool and sped towards the East Phoenix country. Hei Shinjiu could not wait to refine an antidote for the rejuvenation pill. Just as she was about to eat it, she heard a clank coming from the cabin next door. Hei Shinjiu was stunned. What was the pretty boy doing? She ran over with her short legs and saw Di Biming lying on the ground with a pale face. Although there was no ice on his body, his lips were still frozen until they turned blue. Chapter 3459 was actually Mei Lan Glaze. Yun Chuzhou helped Di Biming sit up and asked, "Prince Charming, what's wrong? Didn't you seal your 7 emotions and 6 desires? Why is the cold poison still acting up?" Di Biming's expression was still calm as he said coldly, "I don't know why, but the cold poison in my body suddenly acted up, and it's even more powerful than before." Yun Chuzhou frowned. It was even more intense than before. Could it be that something had triggered the thing in his body? Could it be the blue marble or the ghost face orchid? In order to verify her thoughts, Yun Chuzhou took out a ghost face orchid and waved it in front of Di Biming. Di Biming did not have any special reaction, but when Yun Chuzhou took out a piece of blue marble, Di Biming's face suddenly turned even paler. Clearly, the blue marble was the culprit. Yun Chuzhou quickly put away the blue marble. This thing could actually trigger the cold poison in the gigolo's body. When she thought about how the people of the Li Hate Palace wanted to take the blue marble, could it be to deal with the gigolo? She shook her head. How was this possible? Even the gigolo himself didn't know that the blue marble would affect him, so how could the people of the Li Hate Palace know? It must be a coincidence. However, fortunately, she had completely cut down the blue marble in the ghost cave. Even if the people of the Li Hate Palace really wanted to harm the gigolo, there was no way they could obtain it. Di Biming's eyes surged with emotions as he tightly clenched his fists. After a moment, his eyes regained their calmness. He said indifferently, "Although the blue charm glaze has triggered the cold poison, it has already been suppressed by this main body. There won't be any major problems. You can rest assured." Yun Chuzhou looked at Di Biming, whose face was as pale as a sheet of paper. She curled her lips slightly and said, "Don't you feel guilty saying this? Let me ask you, how much spiritual power do you have left? Don't tell me you don't have any left." Di Biming was silent for a long while, and then said with a slightly bitter tone, "Less than 1%. Yun Chuzhou, this was not a big deal. Did he really think she was a 3-year-old child? Just as He Xinjiu was silently complaining, she was shocked. She ran to the observation window and saw several flying spiritual artifacts flying over, obviously trying to force them to land. Yun Chujia's heart sank. The people from the Palace of Hatred had arrived so quickly. It shouldn't be. At this moment, a shout came from one of the flying spirit tools, "Land immediately and accept the official's identity verification. Otherwise, don't blame us for being impolite." Official's identity verification? It must be someone from the Jun Tian Tian Kingdom. It must be an order from the Palace of Hatred. After all, they were in the Jun Tian Tian Kingdom, so the people from the Jun Tian Tian Kingdom could rush over immediately. However, what should they do next? It was definitely impossible to escape. If the pretty boy's cold poison had not taken effect, he could have easily dealt with these people. If they resisted now, they would be courting death. However, if they landed, they would not have any identity documents. Yun Chuzhou looked at her small arms and legs. Not to mention her current condition, even if she took the antidote, she would not be able to defeat so many people. What should she do? Yun Chuzhou stared at her little paws and her eyes lit up. She immediately ran to Di Biming and stuffed a pill into his mouth. Di Biming was caught off guard and swallowed the pill. He asked in confusion, "What kind of pill did you give me?" Yun Chuzhou didn't say anything. She just gloated at Di Biming. Chapter 3460 Dabao and Xiaobao. Yun Chuzhou ignored him and took out a transfiguration pill and swallowed it. This guy thought about it and felt that it was still not safe. He took out the antidote for the rejuvenation pill and gently bit it. This guy thought about it and gave Di Biming another transfiguration pill. A moment later, there was only a little boy and a little girl left in the cabin. Both of them looked like they were only 5 or 6 years old. The little boy was stunned. Di Biming stared at his small arms and legs. The cold air emitted from his body was even colder than the cold poison. He looked at Yun Chuzhou coldly. "What do you want to do?" Yun Chuzhou said softly, "If I don't do this, how can I hide from them to check my identity? Later, you will say that we have encountered bad people. In order to protect us, our parents lured away those bad people. If we ask you about your identity, you will cry. Do you hear me?" Although Di Biming was so angry that smoke was almost coming out of his head, he knew that this was also a solution. Anyway, he had the antidote in his hands. Once he was out of danger, he would just take the antidote. Perhaps because his body had become smaller, Di Biming felt that the influence of the cold poison had weakened a lot. Although his spiritual power was still very weak, at least he would have no problem walking. Yun Chuzhou took her short legs and controlled the flying spirit tool to land on the ground. Then, she was led down the flying spirit tool by Di Biming. The people from the Juntian kingdom were stunned when they saw the two little kids. "Where are your parents?" Di Biming said with an indifferent expression, "We met some bad people on the way. In order to protect us, our parents lured those bad people away." Yun Chuzhou saw Di Biming's calm expression and cursed in her heart. He couldn't even act. He was so stupid. She pursed her lips and hugged Di Biming's waist. She pinched him hard on the waist and started sobbing. "Brother, I'm scared. I want father, I want mother." Sob, Di Biming was pinched so hard that his mouth twitched. He finally realized that his expression was too calm. In order to cover it up, he had to lower his head and remain silent. The people from the Juntian kingdom sized up the two little ones. Then, they thought of the orders from above. A cold man and a 3 or 4-year-old little girl. These two were obviously not of the same age. Moreover, the little boy's face was pale. It seemed that he was seriously ill. It was impossible for these two little kids to be wanted criminals. The leader frowned and said, "What are your names? What are your parents' names? Do you still remember where your home is?" Little Nine gave Di Biming a look. Di Biming squatted on the ground with a pale face. His forehead was full of bean-sized beads of sweat. Little Nine cried again, Big brother is sick. Big brother is called Da Bao, and I am Little Bao. We are both 5 years old." Sob, one of the subordinates approached the leader and said, "Boss, I think these two are too young. They look like twins. Even if you ask them, you won't be able to get anything out of them. Didn't they say that their parents lured the enemy away? Maybe they will come and look for them in a while. Besides, the capital is not far ahead. After they enter the city, there will naturally be people who will pity them and help them. We have important matters to attend to, so it's better to ignore these two little kids. Otherwise, if the higher-ups blame us, our lives will be in danger." The leader nodded and then said to the two little ones, "In order to catch the important criminals, the entire Juntian kingdom is prohibited from flying. A few miles south is Yanli City. Go into the city and ask for help." Di Biming struggled to stand up and nodded his head. Little Nine said in a childish voice, "Thank you. You are really good people." The officers and soldiers were amused by Little Nine's words. They gave a few more instructions and then left. Chapter 3461, Two small hands holding hands. Yun Chuzhou looked at the flying spirit tool in the distance and looked at Little Ming, who had an indifferent expression. "Let's enter the city first. The most dangerous place is the safest place. We will leave when your spiritual power has recovered." Di Biming nodded. Now, even if he was unwilling, he did not have the ability to resist. They did not have any identity documents, so they could only hide as children. Moreover, it was safer inside Jinli City than outside. At least there weren't any demonic beasts attacking. Yun Chujio reached out her small claws and held Di Baiming's hand. Di Baiming didn't say anything, but his small face was tight. Yun Chujio stared at the side of Little Ming's face. Although he had taken a disguise pill, there was a type of person who was born to make people ignore his appearance. A certain someone was obviously this type. Regardless of his figure, appearance, or even his age, it did not affect him from becoming the focus of the crowd. Even if Little Ming had become a little bun, his tightly pursed lips and cold eyes still gave off an aura that made people stay away from him. He had obviously restrained this aura just now. Otherwise, the officers and soldiers would not have believed them so easily. Yun Chujio's heart itched when she saw this. She leaned over and kissed Little Ming's face. Little Ming's handsome face immediately turned red. He staggered and pursed his lips even tighter. He said coldly, "Men and women shouldn't be intimate. You should be more careful." Little Nine hugged her stomach and laughed so hard that she couldn't straighten her back. If Di Baiming had said this before, it would have been a little intimidating. However, when this little bun said it in a soft child's voice, it was almost like he was acting coquettishly. Little Ming obviously realized this as well. He looked coldly at Little Nine, who was laughing so hard that she was leaning back and forth. Then, he walked quickly with his short legs. Obviously, he wasn't going to bother with Little Nine anymore. Hei Shinjio looked at the desolate little figure in front of her and laughed even harder. Although the two of them were in danger now, it was really worth it to see the pretty boy become like this. The hands under the sleeves of a certain figure clenched tightly, and his eyes were dark. Damn it! He was too weak now. The little blue glaze had made him lose the ability to protect himself, let alone protect that little rascal. He had to take back what belonged to him as soon as possible. Hei Shinjio hopped to the side of a certain figure. She held his little hand and said with a smile, "Little brother, don't be angry. No matter what, you have become smaller. At least the cold poison has weakened. When the cold poison is fine, we can take the antidote." A certain person's face was still expressionless, but he did not shake off Hei Xinjia's claws. He held her hand and walked out of Yangli City. The city of Yangli City was even more magnificent than Starry Night City. Its size was comparable to 5 or 6 Starry Night cities. There were many soldiers guarding the city gate. They strictly checked everyone's identity documents. Occasionally, they would meet a handsome man or a 3 or 4-year-old girl, and they would be detained and interrogated strictly. Yun Chujio silently gave herself a 360-degree, without any blind spots, and then looked at a certain person next to her proudly. A certain person was still expressionless, as if he did not see her gloating. Hei Shinjio silently pinched him and said in a low voice, "Act well. Is there a little bun with a cold face like you?" Although Di Baiming was reluctant, he had no choice but to restrain his aura. Outsiders might feel that this little boy was too cold, but they would not be too surprised. Chapter 3462 had a hint of cuteness. Yun Chujio had adjusted her spiritual power to the 8th layer of the spiritual venerable realm when she landed on the flying spirit tool. As for a certain one, he had also adjusted his spiritual power to the 8th layer of the spiritual venerable realm with a secret technique. The two of them held hands and arrived at the city gate. The soldiers guarding the city gate glanced at the two little ones. "Kids, where are your parents?" Yun Chujio pouted. "We got separated from them. An uncle told us to go into the city and wait for them." A few soldiers looked at the two little ones suspiciously. They looked to be about 5 or 6 years old, and their spiritual power was at the 8th layer of the spiritual venerable realm. They seemed to be quite talented, and their clothes were very exquisite. They should be children of big families. They didn't want to offend people, so their tone was quite good. They asked, "What uncle?" "Just like you guys, he's also a soldier. However, his clothes are purple, and there's a mole on his chin." "It seems like people call him Leader Zhang," Little Nine said softly. The soldiers looked at each other when they heard that. Leader Zhang was the commander of the royal guards. Since Leader Zhang had specifically instructed these two little dolls to enter the city, perhaps these two little dolls really had some background. Therefore, the soldiers did not continue interrogating. They waved their hands and let the two children enter Yangli city. A certain lord's eyes flashed. When this little scoundrel lied, he did not even blink his eyes. However, it made people feel that he was a little cute. He must have lost his brain because his body had become smaller. That must be it. Hei Xinjiu did not know what the certain someone was thinking. When she saw the bustling scene in the city, she immediately threw her worries to the back of her mind. Especially when she saw the snacks on both sides of the road, she could not walk anymore. The certain someone looked speechlessly at little Nine, who had bought a huge pile of snacks. Hei Xinjiu held a candy man and ate as she walked. She smiled and asked a certain someone beside her, "Brother, try this. It's so sweet." A certain person looked at her indifferently and did not say anything. Hei Xinjiu curled her lips. She did not know how to enjoy life at all. If she did not want to eat, then so be it. Hei Xinjiu still wanted to go to the restaurant to have a big meal, but she was stopped by a certain person. "Don't cause trouble. Let's find a bigger inn to stay in. Don't go out too much in the future." Although Hei Xinjiu was unwilling, she knew that Di Biming was right. It was better to keep a low profile. The two little ones finally chose a big inn and asked for a superior room to stay in. Although the owner of the inn was surprised to see only the two little kids, he thought that their parents would come soon, so he didn't say anything. This was also the reason why Di Biming and Yunchujiu chose the large inn. The owner and staff of the large inn were well informed and wouldn't be surprised. If they chose a small inn, they might get into trouble. The two little ones naturally did not want 2 rooms. At night, after little Nine washed up, she climbed onto the bed. Then, she saw a certain someone take out a futon and sit cross-legged on the ground to meditate. Little Nine pouted. "If you want your cold poison to be bad, you can meditate on the ground tonight. I'm not a tiger, do you have to be so afraid of me? You don't even dare to sleep on the same bed as me. Besides, with your small body, I have no interest in doing anything." A certain venerable's body stiffened. He stood up and looked at Xiaojiu coldly. "If you continue to speak without thinking, venerable, humph. What about you? Let me tell you, pretty boy, your fate is in my hands now. If you make me unhappy, I'll make you a little bun for the rest of your life." Hei Xinjiu said proudly. Chapter 3463 Miss Ming will treat you again tomorrow. A certain venerable looked at Hei Xinjiu, who was so proud that she forgot herself. He said coldly, "My fate is in your hands." Hei Xinjiu straightened her back and said proudly, "Of course. If I don't give you the antidote, you can only do this. Why don't you come over and serve me well?" Hei Xinjia's heart was filled with joy. At first, she thought that turning over a serf and singing would be very far away. She didn't expect that she would have such a good opportunity by accident. If she didn't take the opportunity to torture the gigolo, she would regret it for the rest of her life. "Little Jiu, you seem to have made a mistake. Even if my spiritual power is less than 1% now, it's still more than enough to deal with you. If you don't believe me, let's try." A certain venerable looked at Hei Xinjiu coldly. If she could be frightened by a few words, then she would not be Hei Xinjiu. Although this fellow's heart was beating a little, he still said arrogantly, "Even if you are stronger than me now, you have the frost poison. If you use your spiritual power, the frost poison might be even more serious. You won't take the risk, right?" A certain man walked to the bedside and looked at Hei Xinjiu indifferently. Disrespectful people never get threatened. "If you don't believe me, you can try." Hei Xinjiu calculated in her heart. Although this gigolo's face was a little pale, he seemed to be all right. Should she stir up a hornet's nest or not? While this guy was hesitating, a certain man was already lying on the outside of the bed. He put away the luminous pearl and said coldly, "Go to sleep." Hei Shinjo blinked her eyes and decided to test him. Therefore, she reached out her chubby little claws and grabbed a certain man's hand by his side. Feeling the warmth in her palm, the certain hand hesitated for a moment and did not make a sound. It also did not shake off Hei Xinjia's little claws. In the darkness, Hei Shinjo curled the corners of her lips proudly. Then, she rubbed and rubbed into the certain hand's embrace. Alright, although the two little ones were about the same size now, Hei Shinjo somehow felt a sense of security. A certain body stiffened for a moment and said after a long while, "Aren't you afraid that you will catch a cold because of the cold air on my body?" Hei Shinjo said indifferently, "I'm not afraid. Have you forgotten? I have the 10,000-year-old fire marrow on me. I even hugged you in the fallen god abyss last time." A certain body suddenly recalled some memories and the tip of his ears immediately turned red. He did not know if the 7 emotions and 6 desires that had been sealed had loosened, but the cold poison in his body instantly showed signs of worsening. Yun Chujio also felt the changes in Di Baiming's body, and she did not dare to say anything more. Damn it, she did not say anything, so how did she get sick from flirting? She was simply wronged to death. However, Hei Shinjo thought of the fallen god abyss and remembered that the Guai Chao was able to attract the cold poison in Di Baiming's body. Without saying anything, he kissed a certain being. A certain Jiao was struggling with the cold poison in his body. Who would have thought that Yun Chujio would kiss him secretly? Almost in an instant, something jumped into Yun Chujio's dantian from Di Baiming's body. Yun Chujio was delighted. Io, looks like that thing didn't learn its lesson and was successfully seduced by Guai Chao again. Di Baiming also felt it, so he didn't push Yun Chujio away. However, a certain Jiao almost bit a certain Jiao's lips until they were swollen, but he didn't gain anything from it. This fellow could only give up dejectedly. He stretched out his small claws and patted a certain Jiao's face. He said slyly, "Forget it, I don't think there will be any effect today. I'll treat you tomorrow." Chapter 3464, Uninvited Guests. A certain someone grabbed Hei Xinjia's claw. His cold voice was obviously filled with suppressed anger. "Little Jiao, don't go too far." Hei Shinjo looked at the originally cold face of a certain someone under the moonlight. His face was flushed red, and his lips were also messed up by her. He said dryly, "Didn't I do it to help you get rid of the cold poison? Otherwise, do you think I would kiss you? I'm very reserved, alright." A certain someone's pupils constricted slightly. "You're reserved? You're just like a female hooligan. It doesn't have anything to do with being reserved, alright?" Hei Shinjo yawned and mumbled, "Alright, stop being so pretentious. You're so sleepy. Go to sleep, pretentious." A certain someone, Hei Shinjo, fell asleep very soon. Di Baiming's body was weak now, so he fell asleep in a daze. The next day, Hei Shinjo opened her eyes and kissed Di Baiming. Di Baiming hesitated but did not dodge. Hei Shinjo struggled for a long time, but she could not draw out the thing in Di Baiming's body. She could only give up and mutter, "Forget it, Miss is hungry. Let's continue after you are full." After Yun Chujio finished speaking, she clearly felt a chill coming from her side. However, this guy was already immune to it. He climbed out of the bed and washed up as if nothing had happened. A certain Jiao clenched her fists by her side. Her cold eyes looked deeply at the certain Jiao who was washing her face. After a long while, she got out of bed and washed up. After washing up, when the certain Jiao was about to eat the fasting pill, Hei Shinjo stuffed a pair of chopsticks into his hands. "If you want the cold poison to heal faster, eat well." The certain Jiao did not refuse and ate breakfast with Yun Chujio. Feeling the warmth in his stomach, a thought arose in his mind. It seemed that eating these dishes was indeed more comfortable than fasting pills, although it was a waste of time. After breakfast, Di Biming forced He Xinjiu to cultivate with him. A certain Jiu was almost driven mad by the two little ones staying in the inn for the next 2 days. "Prince Charming, let's go out for a walk. If we continue to hold it in, I will turn into a mushroom," He Xinjiu said as she looked at the lively street through the window. A certain someone didn't say anything, obviously not intending to go out. "Prince Charming, how are we going to get information if we don't go out? If the news is not so strong, we can go out of the city." A certain someone said indifferently, "What's the point of going out of the city? Stay in this room obediently before the frost poison is cured. You can't go anywhere." He Xinjiu pursed her lips. Actually, she also knew that staying in the inn was safer than going anywhere. She said that gathering information was just an excuse. This fellow just wanted to go out for a stroll. Another 2 days passed, and everything was peaceful. Under the suppression of Di Biming, He Xinjiu also gave up the idea of going out for a stroll. On this day, the two little ones were cultivating in the room when the sound of footsteps came from outside the door. Yun Chujiu and Di Biming looked at each other. Both of them were shocked. Who was it? Could it be that it was coming for them? The sound of footsteps stopped at their door. Yun Chujia's heart tightened. Was it really coming for them? At this moment, the door was pushed open. The inn owner said with a smile, "Two little guests, Leader Zhang is here to see you." Yun Chujiu saw the people beside the innkeeper and her heart thumped. It was actually the person who had intercepted her and the pretty boy's flying spirit tool. What was he doing here? Could it be that he was suspecting them? Chapter 3465, What was she going to do? Although Yun Chujiu was bewildered, she revealed a pleasantly surprised expression on her face and said softly, "Uncle, is there any news about our parents?" Leader Zhang glanced at the two little guys. He sighed and said, "When we were on a mission, we happened to find the remains of a flying spirit tool and some bones that were gnawed by demonic beasts. I'm afraid that your parents are in grave danger." Yun Chujiu, Di Biming, Yun Chujiu was the first to react. She hugged a certain someone and cried loudly. As she cried, she secretly pinched a certain someone. "Brother, we've become orphans." Sob, "Brother, we don't have a home anymore." A certain someone did not know what crying was. Even if Yun Chujiu pinched him until he was in pain, he only lowered his eyes. There was still no sadness on his face. However, in the eyes of Leader Zhang and the others, the appearance of a certain deity was automatically imagined by them. This child was probably still unable to accept the fact that his parents had passed away for a short period of time. That was why he had a blank look on his face. Leader Zhang sighed in his heart. He originally did not like to meddle in other people's business. However, when he saw the remains of the flying spirit tool, he remembered what Little Nine said about him being a good person. Therefore, after he returned, he sent someone to find the place where the siblings were staying. After coming over for a while, Leader Zhang saw that Little Nine had calmed down a little. Then he asked, "Although your parents have passed away, there must be other relatives in the family. Where is your home? I'll send someone to send you back." He Xinjiu pursed her lips. "Father and mother have passed away, so we don't have a home anymore. Sob, we have nowhere to go." Leader Zhang frowned. No home. Could it be that something had happened to their family in the first place, which was why their parents had taken them away? Then, the person who had tried to kill them might not be a rogue cultivator, but a fight within the family. Leader Zhang imagined a fierce and cruel civil war in the family, and he looked at the two little ones with even more pity in his eyes. He said, "Since you have nowhere else to go, there is a child welfare bureau for orphans in the city. Why don't you go there? Staying in an inn is not a long-term solution." He Xinjiu thought to herself that she would not go to the child welfare bureau, but she could not reject it openly. the guy cried and said, "No, we will wait for father and mother here. They will definitely come to us. They will not die." Leader Zhang tried to persuade them again. Seeing that Yun Chujio was crying and refusing to go, he had to give up. "Forget it. Since you are not willing to go, I will not force you. You can stay here for now. I will come and visit you in a few days." He Xinjiu said a few words of gratitude softly before Leader Zhang left with his men. Yun Chujio saw that everyone had left through the crack of the door and heaved a sigh of relief. She thought that she had been exposed and was scared to death. However, with the visit of Leader Zhang, their identities had been confirmed. At least, it would not arouse the suspicion of the inn owner. Just when He Xinjiu thought that everything was calm, Leader Zhang came to the inn again on this day with many soldiers. Children above the age of 5 and below the age of 10, immediately follow me to the divine hall. No mistakes are allowed, Leader Zhang said loudly. Yun Chujia's heart was like a mutt. What kind of trouble was this? Although the two little ones were not in love, they could only follow the children of other guests and be taken out of the inn. Yun Chujio moved to Leader Zhang's side and sweetly asked, "Uncle, where are you taking us?" Leader Zhang's face was slightly smug as he said, "The hateful palace wants to recruit inner palace disciples." Inner palace disciples are different from ordinary hateful palace disciples. Inner palace disciples are nurtured by the hateful palace from a young age, and their status is higher than other disciples. Inner palace disciples are only recruited once every 5 years. This is a once-in-lifetime opportunity. Originally, you didn't have parents, so you were unable to provide proof of identity. Logically speaking, you don't have the qualifications to participate in the selection. However, with this commander vouching for you, you don't have to worry about this problem. After saying this, Leader Zhang looked at little Nine with a face full of anticipation. His meaning was obvious. Quickly thank me. Quickly praise me. Yun Chujia's heart was like a beeping dog. Who the fuck wanted to participate in some inner palace disciple selection? However, when she saw the excited faces of the children around her and the ecstatic expressions of their parents, she could only swallow her words of reluctance. In the hearts of everyone, the Li Hen Palace was supreme. It was a place like a fairyland. If she rejected it, it would definitely arouse the suspicion of others. Moreover, she was only going to register. When the time came, she would just have to think of a way to make her and the gigolo lose. Thinking of this, He Xinjia's face was filled with gratitude. "Uncle, thank you so much. You're really a good person." When Leader Zhang heard little Nine's praise, he was very gratified. This was a piece of cake for him, but it could change the lives of these two children. He felt that he was great. Of course, Leader Zhang also felt that although these two children were young, their aptitude seemed to be quite good. Moreover, they were intelligent and quick-witted. If they were chosen by the Li Hate Palace, they might be able to borrow some strength in the future. Heavens, if he could connect with the Li Hate Palace's inner sect, then his future would be limitless. Leader Zhang then brought people to other inns in the city to gather children of the right age. Finally, he brought them all to the divine hall of the Jun Tian kingdom. By the time Yun Chujio and the others arrived, many children had already gathered in the square of the divine hall. They were presumably children of noble families and ordinary people. The children were chattering excitedly. Clearly, they all felt that this was a good opportunity to soar to the sky. At this moment, Emperor Xian Huan and the imperial preceptor of the Jun Tian kingdom walked over. The square instantly fell silent. Emperor Xian Huan first said some polite words, nothing more than expressing his loyalty to the Li Hate Palace. Now, he could be said to be trembling with fear. The people of the Lihan Palace had met with trouble in his territory, and they had searched for so many days without finding anything. He was afraid that the Lihan Palace would vent their anger on him, so he was even more cautious. After Emperor Xian Huan finished speaking, the imperial tutor of the June Heaven Kingdom said, the criteria for the Lihan Palace to select people are very strict. It is naturally impossible for all of you to have the qualifications to go to the Lihan Palace to participate in the selection. Now, I will carry out the preliminary selection first. Those who are eliminated can go back. Yun Chuzhou blinked her eyes. Preliminary selection. Since there was a preliminary selection, it would be easy to handle. She would see how the children who were eliminated looked like. She would just learn from them. In any case, she could not participate in the selection no matter what. Yun Chuzhou was afraid that a certain someone would not cooperate, so she forcefully shook his hand. A certain someone's clear and cold eyes glanced at her and nodded indiscernibly. When Yun Chuzhou saw that a certain someone was so cooperative, her eyes immediately curved into a crescent moon. When a certain someone saw Yun Chuzhiu's appearance, although his expression did not change, his tightly pursed lips curled up slightly. Yun Chuzhiu's calculations were quite good, but she had not expected that the method of the imperial preceptor's primary selection would actually be, judging a person by their appearance. Although Yun Chuzhou and Di Baiming had already taken the transfiguration pill, their looks were still very outstanding among these children, so they had passed the primary selection just like that. He Xinjia's heart was like a dog that was bawling. This was also possible. Could it be that the first requirement to become a disciple of the Li Hate Palace was to be good-looking? Appearance alone eliminated nearly half of the children, and then the imperial preceptor eliminated the children with low spiritual power. As a result, there were less than 50 children left in the square. The imperial preceptor looked at the remaining children and pondered for a moment before saying, "Introduce yourselves one by one, and tell me the reason why you want to enter the Li Hate Palace. Only 20 of you will be able to enter the next round of the selection." Hearing the imperial tutor's question, Yun Chuzhou was immediately assured. This was easy. In a while, her answer would guarantee that she would not be selected. The children answered one by one. As for why they wanted to enter the Lihan Palace, it was simply because they wanted to be loyal to the Lihan Palace master and wanted to become stronger. He Xinjiu and Di Baiming were ranked last. Therefore, it was He Xinjia's turn. After quite a while. He Xinjiu sniffled and cried, "Wu Wu, my name is Xiao Bao, and my brother is De Bao. Our father and mother were killed by someone." Wu Wu, leader Zhang, who was standing aside, gritted his teeth in anxiety. This little girl was usually very smart. Why was she crying now? It was over. He was definitely not going to be chosen. The state preceptor's expression did not change much. He looked at Di Baiming, who was standing beside Yun Chuzhou, and said, "It's your turn. Go ahead." Di Baiming lowered his head. Even if he was beaten to death, he did not want to say his stupid name like De Bao. Therefore, he said 5 words stiffly, "I'll listen to my sister." When leader Zhang heard that, he was instantly discouraged. These 2 little dolls were definitely going to be eliminated. It seemed that they did not have a rich and noble life. When the state preceptor saw that all the children had finished answering, he began to distribute the jade tokens in his hands. The children who received the jade tokens would mean that they had passed the selection. Therefore, he looked at the state preceptor with eager eyes. He Xinjiu knew that she and Di Baiming could not be selected at all, so she did not even bother to look at the national master. She thought to herself that since she had already left the inn today, she could go to the restaurant and have a big meal. If the pretty boy did not agree, she would cry for him to see. Just when she was feeling happy, she heard the national master's voice from above her head, "Take this. This is your jade token." Yun Chuzhou looked up in confusion, only to see that the imperial tutor still had 2 jade tokens left in his hands, which were obviously hers and Di Baiming's. This guy's heart was as mad as a dog. Fuck. She was crying like an idiot just now, and she was actually chosen. Was this imperial tutor blind? Seeing her in a daze, the imperial tutor thought that this little girl was happy silly, so he stuffed the jade token to her, and then handed the remaining jade token to Beiming. A certain figure was also in a daze, but he was obviously calmer than He Xinjiu. He took the jade token indifferently. The imperial preceptor asked the servants to take the children who had been eliminated out. A few children gathered their courage and questioned, "Imperial preceptor, that little treasure was crying." That Dabao only managed to squeeze out 5 words. They didn't even give a reason to join the Li Hen palace. Why were they chosen? He Xinjiu secretly agreed when she heard this. What a good question. That's right. Why were they chosen? They didn't want to be chosen at all right? The national master glanced at the children who had been eliminated and said in a calm tone, because what they said was the truth, the truest thought in their hearts. Their parents were killed by a rapist, so they have enough motivation to cultivate properly. Moreover, the brotherly and sisterly love is quite rare. Yun Chuzhou, there was something that she did not know whether to say or not. Which fucking eye of yours could tell that they were speaking the truth? When those children heard the imperial preceptor's words, they were instantly rendered speechless and brought out dejectedly. Leader Zhang, on the other hand, was very happy. He did not expect that the 2 children had actually passed the selection by accident. Although there were still many rounds of selection to come, these 2 children had survived a great disaster and would definitely have good fortune in the future. Perhaps they would really be chosen. Just as Leader Zhang was thinking about it, the imperial preceptor said to him, "Leader Zhang, escort these children to the Li Hate Palace. Don't let anything happen to them." Leader Zhang respectfully acknowledged and then brought the 20 children out of the divine hall. Yun Chuzhou was calculating in her heart. It was said that the Jun Tian kingdom was hundreds of thousands of miles away from the Li Hate Palace. She could just find an excuse to escape on the way and use this opportunity to escape. When this fellow thought of this, his mood immediately became much better. He even walked briskly. Beiming keenly sensed the change in He Xinjiu's mood and frowned slightly. However, he quickly guessed Yun Chuzhiu's thoughts. He also felt that this was a good opportunity to escape, so his slightly furrowed brows also relaxed. However, when he and He Xinjiu saw the thousands of soldiers outside the city gates, their hearts instantly turned cold. They had only escorted 20 children, yet they had already sent so many soldiers. How could they have known that Emperor Xian Huan was treading on thin ice? Afraid of any mishaps, they had sent heavy soldiers to escort him. He Xinjiu's head immediately drooped. It was over. It was impossible for them to escape now. With so many pairs of eyes staring at them, even if she and the pretty boy grew wings, they would not be able to escape. Everyone boarded their flying spirit tools and sped in the direction of Li Hen Palace. The children were initially a little reserved, but they quickly became familiar with each other. They were even faintly divided into 3 factions. One of them was a noble child, led by the 9th Prince Xian Yuanzhua, while the other faction was a commoner child. A little boy named Deng Qianyuan was the leader. As for He Xinjiu and Beiming, they were pushed aside and became the 3rd faction. Both sides had tried to get the 2 of them to join, but He Xinjiu had arrogantly rejected them. As a result, the 2 of them became the 3rd faction with honor. Because of Leader Zhang's care for the 2 of them, although those children isolated He Xinjiu and a certain respected figure, they did not dare to openly bully the 2 of them. Yun Chuzhou was not a child. She scoffed at such childish behavior. If she had the time, she would rather tease her gigolo. After walking for about half a day, the flying spirit tool landed on the ground. He Xinjiu could not help but wonder, why did it land so suddenly? What happened? After a while, more children boarded the flying spirit tool. Yun Chuzhou listened to a few words and immediately understood. These children were selected from the other cities of the Jun Tian kingdom. That's right, it was impossible to only choose from the capital city. The children from other cities naturally had to participate in the election. However, the number of children chosen from other cities was obviously less than the number chosen from the capital city. This was understandable. The people with high spiritual power in the Jun Tian kingdom were basically all gathered in the capital city. There were constantly new children joining. When they left the Jun Tian kingdom, the number of children had already risen from 20 to 100. The children quickly joined Xian Yuanzhua and Deng Qianyuan's camp. Only He Xinjiu and Di Baiming were still leisurely wandering outside. He Xinjiu tried several times to escape when the flying spiritual device landed, but she failed. Fortunately, she was smart enough to not be discovered by others. This guy could only say to a certain god in a low voice, "Prince Charming, it seems that we can only hope that we will be eliminated or wait for you to recover your spiritual power." Compared to He Xinjiu, Di Baiming was much calmer. He lightly said, "N. Yun Chujiu." After He Xinjiu had thought things through, she immediately let go of herself. Every day, she would either eat, sleep, or touch a certain someone. A certain someone had tried to stop her a few times but to no avail, so she couldn't be bothered with her. After all, she was only touching her small hands, touching her face, and secretly kissing him a few times, that was all. A few days later, the flying spirit tool landed again. He Xinjiu thought that she had arrived at the Li Hate Palace, but who would have thought that after disembarking from the flying spirit tool, she would discover that there was a huge courtyard not far away. Could this be the Li Hate Palace? Wasn't this a little too rustic? Just as He Xinjiu was thinking about this, Leader Zhang had everyone stand in a row and brought them to the entrance of the courtyard. Yun Chujiu then saw a plaque on the door with 4 big words written on it, Academy Selection. Academy Selection? What the hell was this? Could it be that in order to select the so-called inner court disciples, they had to go to school first before they could select a suitable candidate? Was he crazy? Leader Zhang took the token given to him by the national master and handed it to the guard at the door. One of the guards took the token and walked in. A moment later, a middle-aged man walked out from inside. His attitude was not bad, but one could see that he had a faintly superior attitude. Leader Zhang naturally did not dare to have any objections. After giving some instructions, he left with his men. Before leaving, Leader Zhang looked at He Xinjiu and Di Baiming with encouragement. His intention was self-evident. Naturally, he hoped that they could be selected in the end. He Xinjiu's feelings toward Leader Zhang were complicated. In short, it was just one sentence. Fuck, good intentions do bad things. The middle-aged man glanced at the children and said coldly, "From now on, your performance will determine whether you will be selected or not. Therefore, if anyone is eliminated, don't blame me for not reminding him." Yun Chujiu was delighted. If that was the case, that would be great. She was looking forward to being eliminated. It would be great if she could just cause some trouble. Therefore, the other children all lined up and walked inside obediently. Only He Xinjiu was jumping around and teasing Di Baiming behind her from time to time. This guy silently shouted in his heart, "Eliminate me. Eliminate me. Come and eliminate me quickly." Unfortunately, the middle-aged man only glanced at the two of them and did not say anything. He Xinjiu felt stifled. Was this person blind? Why didn't he eliminate her and the gigolo? After entering the courtyard, Yun Chujiu realized that the courtyard looked bigger than the outside. There were many courtyards inside, and after a few twists and turns, they were brought to a very large courtyard. There were 3 words written on the door of the courtyard, the Jun Tian courtyard. As the name implied, this courtyard was probably prepared for the children of the Jun Tian kingdom. These few days, all of you will be living and studying in the Jun Tian Academy. In the end, only 10 of you will be left behind. Just now, number 19 Little Treasure and number 20 Dabao were playing around, and each of you will be deducted 1 point. Each of you will start with 100 points. If the points are deducted completely, you will be directly eliminated, the middle-aged man said coldly. Yun Chujio cursed in her heart. Fuck, only 1 point was deducted? You should deduct more points. Hei Shinjo pondered in her heart. She had to work harder and cause more trouble. Naturally, the points would be deducted quickly. This way, she and the gigolo could be sent back to the Juntian kingdom. The middle-aged man continued, I'm the chief instructor of the Juntian Academy. You can call me Instructor Lu Jiaoshi. There will be other instructors to teach you the lessons you need to learn. Now, the men and women will stand separately. I want to assign you a dormitory. The children stood in 2 rows obediently. Only Hei Shinjo stood foolishly in the boys' row. Her fingers were still clutching Di Baiming's clothes, as if she would not let go of him. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi frowned. Number 19, what's wrong with you? Didn't you hear what this instructor said? Quickly stand on the girl's side. Hei Shinjo sobbed. I don't, I just want to be with my brother. We siblings will never be separated. Instructor Lu Jiaoxi's frown deepened. The children who were selected had gone through preliminary selection. How could such a noisy little girl be chosen? Hei Shinjo saw Instructor Lu Jiaoxi's gloomy expression and shouted in her heart, deduct points. Deduct points. It was best to deduct 100 points all at once. Instructor Lu said coldly, deduct 1 more point on the 19th. Now go to the girls' team immediately, or continue to deduct points. Hei Shinjo acted as if she did not hear him and hugged Di Baiming's waist tightly. I don't care. I want separate from my brother anyway. Di Baiming was secretly pinched by Hei Shinjo, so he could only agree stiffly, we siblings will not separate. The rest of the children gloated at the 2 of them. These 2 were really courting death. Even if they were not eliminated this time, they would still lose a lot of points. After a moment, Instructor Lu Jiaoshi said coldly, 10 points will be deducted for each of the 19th and 20th. After Instructor Lu Jiaoshi finished speaking, he did not force Yun Chujio to go to the girl's side. Instead, he began to allocate the dormitories. He calculated in his heart that the little girl would soon realize how inconvenient it was to be with a boy. Moreover, she was now a deviant, so the siblings would definitely be ostracized. When that time came, she would naturally give in. 10 people shared a dormitory. In Yun Chujia's dormitory, other than the siblings, the remaining 8 people were all boys. Coincidentally, all 8 of them were Xian Yuanzuo's group. The 8 of them exchanged glances. They had long disliked these 2 little ones. Previously, with Leader Zhang's protection, they were unable to teach them a lesson. Now that there was finally an opportunity, they would be taught a lesson. Instructor Lu Jiaoshi said some things to take note of, and then let the children return to their respective rooms. Yun Chujio dragged Di Baiming and stayed in the courtyard for a while before entering the dormitory at a leisurely pace. The 8 people in the dormitory each occupied a bed, and the 2 beds at the entrance were piled with sundries. It was obvious that they wanted to make things difficult for Hei Shinjo and Di Baiming. One of the fatties said arrogantly, hey, you 2 will be responsible for serving us from now on. The water for washing our faces and feet is all your business. As for the place to sleep, just sleep on the floor. In this way, you and your sister will not be separated, ha ha ha. Pan, de N0VE1. The other 7 boys also laughed strangely. They were generally 2 years older than Hei Shinjo, so they did not put the 2 little ones in their eyes at all. Di Baiming's little face was expressionless, and it was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. Hei Shinjo, on the other hand, began to giggle. She did not want to bully the little ones with the big ones, but since these brats were looking for death, she could not be blamed. Just use them to deduct points and get eliminated early. When the boys saw Yun Chujio smiling happily, they could not help but look at each other suspiciously. Could this little girl be a fool? Pan de N0VE1. The little fatty curled his lips. Don't tell me you didn't understand what I just said. What are you smiling about? Yun Chujio smiled and took a few steps forward until she was in front of the little fatty. Then, she raised her little arm and jumped up to slap the little fatty twice. Although the little fatty had become smaller, his spiritual power had not decreased. Although he had only used less than 10% of his strength, he had still slapped the little fatty several times. The little fatty's face instantly swelled up like a pig's head. The little fatty was a little confused at the beginning. After he reacted, he scolded angrily, "Stupid girl, you dare to hit me?" Yun Chujio curled her lips. "I just hit you. Do you still want to fight back? Let me tell you, if you hit me, you will lose points. Anyway, I have already lost so many points. I don't care. Come on, hit me." The little fatty's raised hand suddenly stopped. Although he did not know the rules of the June Heaven Academy, he would definitely lose points in a fight. He could not ruin his future just because of a moment of anger. Seeing that the little fatty did not dare to fight back, Yun Chujio immediately took out a whip from her storage ring and swung it on the ground a few times. She said arrogantly, "Hurry up and empty the 2 beds in the innermost part, or I will not be polite. If anyone is not convinced, come and fight me." The 8 boys stared with their mouths agape at the little girl who was holding the whip. She was obviously not as tall as them, but she made them feel that this little thing was very scary. The boys who originally occupied the 2 beds looked at each other and gritted their teeth to vacate the beds. They thought to themselves that they would tell instructor Lu Jiaoxi about this little treasure bullying them the next day. At that time, they might even kick her out directly. Seeing that they had freed up the beds, Yun Chujio walked in with her short legs and held a certain someone's hand. This guy pointed at the boys with his whip and scolded, "Are you pigs? Don't you know how to clean up? Hurry up and clean up the house. Whoever is lazy, let's fight one-on-one." The boys looked at each other but no one moved. They thought to themselves, this little girl was just saying that. Did she really dare to be enemies with all of them? They were clearly too naive. Seeing that no one moved, Hei Shinjio raised her whip and lashed it at the boy closest to her. That little boy could not avoid Hei Xinjia's whip, and he was lashed until he cried out in pain. When the other children saw this, they immediately became terrified. One by one, they quickly began to clean up. They all had one hope in their hearts, and that was to tell instructor Lu Jiaoxi about this little girl's crimes the next day. By then, they would be free from the sea of bitterness. The children finally finished cleaning up, and Hei Shinjio occupied the only table in the room. Then, she held the whip and said to the children, "I'm hungry. Take out the delicious food that you brought. If anyone doesn't know what's good for them, I'll whip them." The corner of a certain respected figure's eye twitched violently. Stealing the children's food, could you be any more shameless? Those children looked at the whip in Yun Chujio's hand and weighed the bright future of joining the Li Hate Palace. They could only reluctantly take out some food and pass it to Hei Shinjio. Hei Shinjio immediately beamed as she called Di Baiming for dinner. This fellow was delighted. Tomorrow, these naughty children would go and complain, and then she and the gigolo would be kicked out. This was great. After dinner, the children went to bed to rest. If it weren't for Yun Chujio, this little devil with a black heart, they would definitely play around and rest. Now, they were afraid that Yun Chujio would find fault with them, so they were all very well behaved. Yun Chujio blinked her eyes and did not return to her own bed. Instead, she climbed onto Di Baiming's bed with both hands and feet. Di Baiming was too lazy to say anything because it would be useless to say anything. He allowed Hei Shinjio to reach out her evil claws and hug him. Hei Shinjio ravished a certain someone for a while. This guy leaned into the ear of a certain someone and whispered, "Prince Charming, do you like this kind of childhood sweetheart tone? Di Biming's cold little face suddenly turned red. He scolded coldly, go to sleep. If you talk again, go back to your own bed. Yun Chujio curled her lips and pinched a certain someone's arm. Only then did she yawn and fall asleep soundly. A certain someone covered the blanket that Yun Chujio had kicked away. In the darkness, he pondered for a long time before closing his eyes. The next day, before dawn, all the children in the room had already woken up. Especially the little fatty with a swollen face and the boy who had been whipped by Yun Chujio. They had finished washing up early. They wished that they could see Instructor Lu Jiaoxi right away. They would expose Yun Chujio's evil deeds and then chase her out. Yun Chujio was awakened by the noise of the children. This fellow's anger from waking up immediately erupted. He said fiercely, all of you shut the fuck up. If anyone disturbs my sleep, I'll kill him. Those children were stunned at first, and then they were furious beyond belief. This little girl was really too overbearing. However, her good days were about to come to an end. They only needed to endure for a little longer, and perseverance was victory. Finally, the sound of assembly came from outside. The children rushed out impatiently. Only Hei Shinjio was still lying lazily on the bed. If she was late, she would be deducted points, right? If that was the case, then she would be late. This guy blinked his eyes, hugged Di Biming's neck and said slyly, we haven't treated you for a long time. Come, little sister will treat you. Be good. While Di Biming was in a daze, Yun Chujio's lips had already kissed him. He might as well just leave it at that. What if it was effective against the cold poison, right? At this moment, outside the house, the children had already lined up. Instructor Lu Jiaoxi glanced at the group and noticed that one group was missing 2 people. He could not help but frown, Group 4, why are there 2 people missing? When the little fatty heard Instructor Lu Jiaoxi's question, he immediately found his backbone. With a sobbing voice, he said, Instructor Lu Jiaoxi, the ones who are missing are De Bao and Xiao Bao. That Xiao Bao beat me up for no reason last night and now he is late for bed. You have to make a decision for me. The boy who was whipped by Yun Chujio also stood up and echoed, Instructor Lu Jiaoxi, that Xiao Bao even beat me with a whip. My back is still burning. Instructor Lu Jiaoxi had actually seen the little fatty's strange behavior just now, but he definitely did not expect that he was actually beaten by that little treasure. That little treasure was 2 to 3 years younger than the little fatty. How did she do it? She probably joined hands with that big treasure. Instructor Lu Jiaoxi was really a little surprised. He originally thought that Big Treasure and Little Treasure would be ostracized and bullied by the other children, but he did not expect that she would instead bully others. Instructor Lu Jiaoxi looked at a guard standing at the side of the team and said, bring the 2 of them out. When the children of Group 4 saw Instructor Lu Jiaoxi's cold expression, they could not help but gloat. De Bao and Xiao Bao would definitely be eliminated. Even if they were not eliminated, they would still lose a lot of points. This was karma. The guard had just walked to the door of Yun Chujio's dormitory when the door was pushed open. Hei Shinjio yawned as she held Di Biming's hand and walked out. The 2 of them leisurely stood at the end of the 4th group as if nothing had happened. Instructor Lu Jiaoxi glanced at the 2 of them and said, those who are late on the 19th and 20th will be deducted 1 point each. Let's start eating breakfast now. When the little fatty saw that Instructor Lu did not mention the fact that Yun Chujio had beaten him up, he could not help but become anxious. Instructor Lu, Xiao Bao beat me up. You have to help me make a decision. The boy who had been whipped also looked at Instructor Lu eagerly. Could it be that this Instructor Lu Jiaoxi had a bad memory? How could he forget in such a short time? Instructor Lu glanced at the 2 of them and then said coldly, as long as no human lives are lost, you can do whatever you want. The little fatty was immediately stunned. The other children were also stunned by Instructor Lu Jiaoxi's words. As long as no human lives were lost, they could do whatever they wanted. Did this mean that they were being encouraged to prey on the weak and suppress their competitors so that they could win in the end? The one who was the most confused was naturally Hei Shinjo. How could she play with them like this? She was too fucking perverted. Very quickly, the children came to their senses. Then, they looked at Yun Chujio and Di Biming with malicious intentions. These two little things were undoubtedly the weakest. Moreover, they did not belong to one of the two factions. It was a piece of cake for them to deal with them. The little fatty and the others revealed a smug smile on their faces. They would have a good time tonight. They had to return all the humiliation they had suffered yesterday to them. After breakfast, the children gathered again. At this moment, a middle-aged man came in from outside the courtyard. He first greeted Instructor Lu Jiaoshi and then said to the crowd, "I am Instructor Yuan. Now, I will teach you a set of sword techniques to test your comprehension abilities." After Instructor Yuan finished speaking, he summoned a treasured sword and demonstrated the sword techniques he wanted to teach them. The children originally thought that Instructor Yuan would disassemble the sword techniques one by one to teach them, but unexpectedly, Instructor Yuan said, "The test will be held tomorrow morning." After Instructor Yuan finished speaking, he directly left the courtyard with Instructor Deng. The children were instantly dumbfounded. They had been so engrossed in watching the show just now that they didn't pay much attention to what was going on with each move. Moreover, even if they watched it seriously, they wouldn't be able to remember it even if they watched it once. The children were all frowning. On the first day, they had already given them a show of strength. They could foresee that the assessment in the future would be more and more stringent. Hei Shinjo curled her lips and directly pulled Di Biming back to the dormitory. She could not be bothered with the bullshit sword technique. Tomorrow, during the assessment, she would just randomly dance a few times. The other children were not as big-hearted as her. When they gathered together, they would recall and discuss one move after another. When everyone's moves were combined, although there were still some differences, it was still much better than 1.5 moves that one person could only remember. In the evening, the children returned to their dorms. The children from Group 4 looked at each other. Today was a great opportunity for revenge. They would teach those two little things a lesson later. The little fatty looked at Hei Shinjo, who was sitting on the chair and eating a fruit. He said fiercely, "Stupid girl, you hit me yesterday. I didn't fight back because I was afraid of losing points." Before the little fatty could finish his words, Yun Chujio threw the fruit core in her hand at his face. "If you want to fight, then fight. What are you talking about?" Yun Chujio had thrown out quite a powerful fruit nucleus. The little fatty's already swollen face was hit by it, and he immediately cried out in pain. The rest of the children were clearly shocked by Yun Chujio's valiant behavior. They had thought that the little girl would definitely be trembling in fear. After all, she had no advantage in any aspect. Who would have thought that she was even more arrogant than before? What right did she have? The children came back to their senses and started to encourage the little fatty. "Lu Dolly, what are you still standing there for? Come on. Are you afraid of this little girl?" The little fatty instantly pounced on Hei Shinjo in a fluster. He was gnashing his teeth in hatred. He was a little tyrant in his family, but now, he had been bullied by a little girl several times. If she wasn't beaten to half-life today, her name wouldn't be Lu Dolly. Yun Chujio wouldn't put a little brat in her eyes. The little fatty's actions were like slow motion in her eyes, and she could easily see the flaws in it. She only dodged slightly and avoided the little fatty's attack, stretching out her short legs. The little fatty sadly lay on the ground. The little fatty's mind went blank for a moment. Who was he? Where was he? What was he doing? Pan DN0VE1 CM. He was actually beaten down by a little guy in one move. He was also a person who cared about his face. How could he survive in the future? Yun Chujio kicked the little fatty. Hey, aren't you going to fight? Get up. The little fatty got up with a red face and rushed towards Hei Shinjo again. However, the outcome was still the same. He didn't even see how the little girl moved before he fell to the ground again. Are you satisfied? Come again if you're not satisfied. It just so happens that the baby had a little too much to eat for dinner, Hei Shinjo said with a smile. The little fatty did not give up. He got up again and rushed towards Hei Shinjo. Unfortunately, some things could not be achieved through hard work. After the little fatty was thrown 8 times, he fell to the ground and died. Yun Chujio kicked him with the tip of her foot. Hey, get up. Let's continue fighting. The little fatty did not say a word. Fuck, he only wanted to die first. He was too ashamed to face anyone. Yun Chujio saw that the little fatty was pretending to be dead, so she did not continue to beat him. Instead, she looked at the other children. Those children were all silent in fear. They were not stupid. If the little fatty fell once or twice, it would be a coincidence. Fuck, he fell 8 times. What did this mean? It meant that this little girl was more powerful than them. Not to mention a one-on-one fight, even if they fought together, they might not be able to win. Moreover, the little girl's brother had not made a move, no matter how one looked at it, that little thing was more powerful than this little girl. Hei Shinjo glanced at them and then said with a smile, I don't eat people. Why are you so afraid? Tell me, which one of you still wants to fight the baby one-on-one? Those children shook their heads like rattledrums. What a joke. They did not want to be as miserable as Lu Dolly. If they fought with her, they would only be tortured. Seeing this, Yun Chujio took out her whip and swung it on the ground a few times. Then, she said with a smile, it seems that you are convinced now. Those children nodded repeatedly. Even if they were not convinced, they did not dare to say it. Yun Chujio touched her chin and revealed a bright smile on her small face. Since you are convinced, you can call me your king from now on. Do you hear me? The king? What the hell is the king? Just as the children were in a daze, they heard the sound of whips cracking. They immediately stuttered, yes, the king. The corner of the eyes of a certain person with an indifferent expression twitched slightly. Was this little scoundrel addicted to bullying children? Could he still have some integrity? If such a scoundrel had his own children in the future, he would probably be the mother of a child. A certain man's thoughts suddenly stopped, and his face turned hot. He quickly crossed his legs to cultivate and stopped paying attention to Hei Xinjia's movements. Hei Shinjo asked the children to stand in 2 rows, then, she said with her hands behind her back, come. I'll teach you a song. The title of the song will be The King Sent Me to Patrol the Mountains. This song will be the group song for our 4th group in the future. Do you hear me? The children felt as if their hearts were going crazy. What the hell was this? However, when they looked at the little fatty who was sitting on the ground, and then at the whip in a certain Joe's hand, they immediately nodded without any backbone. Hei Shinjo nodded in satisfaction and began to teach the naughty children how to sing. When the children heard the lyrics, they were even more afraid. What did she mean by catching a monk for dinner? Was this little girl a cannibal? The more the children thought about it, the more scared they became. They forced themselves to sing a happy psalm with a sense of horror. Hei Shinjo did not care whether they were scared or not. After she had tortured them enough, this guy waved his claws and let them go. Then, he moved closer to a certain lord who was cultivating. He said with a smile, this king is going to bed. My beloved concubine, come with me. Hearing Yun Chujio's words, the children were all dumbfounded. This little pervert even flirted with their own elder brother. A certain someone ignored Hei Shinjo and continued to cultivate as if he had not heard her. Hei Xinjiu pursed her lips and did not say anything else. Instead, she climbed into the bed and lay down on her side. Then, she reached out her claws and hugged a certain someone's waist, rubbing her little head against it. A moment later, a helpless look appeared on the face of a certain king. He had no choice but to give up his meditation and lie on the outside of the bed. Hei Xinjiu immediately snuggled in the arms of a certain king and said happily, "Brother, what do you think of me as a king?" The certain king was silent for a moment before he spat out two words indifferently, "Childish." Hei Xinjiu pouted and said, "How is it childish? I have 8 subordinates now." A certain person said coldly, "What's the use of 8 useless people?" The 8 people, they also wanted to keep their dignity, okay? What did he mean by, "What's the use of 8 useless people"? It turned out that this Dabeo was even more detestable than that little pervert. At least that little pervert had taken them as his subordinates. Hei Xinjiu giggled. "Brother, they are pretty good." The 8 of them suddenly felt a surge of warmth in their hearts. Although this little pervert was hateful, he was at least stronger than her brother. Just when they were inexplicably moved, they heard Hei Xinjiu continue, "Sigh, the main thing is that I don't have any other choice. I'll be a good for nothing and make do with it." The 8 of them, "Fuck, can we feed our feelings to the dogs?" The next morning, the children washed up and left the dormitory one after another. The eyes of the other children in the dormitory flashed with schadenfreude. They felt that the 2 little things would definitely be beaten up badly. Therefore, all the children's gazes fell on the door of the 4th group's dormitory. Under everyone's gaze, with a creak, the door opened. Chapter 3476 made a few random gestures. Everyone was shocked to discover that the first person to come out was actually that little girl. She had her hands behind her back and was leisurely. There were no signs of being beaten at all. Immediately after, that little girl's elder brother walked out with an indifferent expression, followed by those 8 people. Each and every one of them was extremely well behaved. What was going on? Were they stupid? They had such a good opportunity last night, but they actually didn't take care of these 2 little things. During breakfast, Xian Yuanzhua called the 8 children to the side and asked in puzzlement, "You didn't take revenge last night?" The 8 people looked at each other, and the little fatty said in a low voice, "Ninth Prince, that little girl is very strange. We can't beat her." Xian Yuanzhua, what kind of joke was this? That little girl was only about 5 or 6 years old, but they actually couldn't beat her. A bunch of trash. Xian Yuanzhua was born into the imperial family. Although he was only 9 years old, he was ruthless. He was now on par with Deng Qianyuan, so he had to find something to establish his authority. Only then would he be able to win over the other party's people. The greater his power was, the greater the chance of him staying in the Li Hate Palace in the end. He looked at Hei Xinjiu, who was receiving her breakfast, and a trace of ruthlessness appeared in his eyes. He lowered his voice and said, "Tonight, I will bring people to your dormitory. Tonight, no matter what, I will beat up those 2 little things and avenge you." The little fatty's face immediately paled. "Ninth Prince, this, let's forget about it. They are not in our way. Why must we target them?" He was most likely afraid of being beaten up. He vaguely felt that even if the 9th Prince brought people to help them, they might, most likely, 80% still not be able to defeat that little pervert. Xian Yuanzhua looked at him unhappily. "You're one of my people. Since you've been beaten up, I naturally have to help you vent your anger. There's no need to say more. At night, don't close the door. After the sky turns dark, it'll bring people over." The little fatty saw Xian Yuanzhuo's gloomy expression and didn't dare to say anything. He unintentionally raised his head and saw that the little pervert was holding a bun in his hand. He was looking at Xian Yuanzhua with a smile that made him shudder. The little fatty instantly felt bad. What was that little pervert smiling about? Could it be that he had guessed what they had said? If he had guessed it, why would she not only not be afraid, but also smile? Xian Yuanjue did not notice the little fatty's strange behavior and directly brought his people over to pick up breakfast. After the children had eaten breakfast, they took advantage of Instructor Yuan's absence and began to demonstrate the sword techniques they had learned the day before. Only He Xinjiu and Di Baiming, the two little ones, sat leisurely on the small horse carriage and basked in the sun. Of course, a certain lord originally did not want to sit on the small horse carriage, but he could not withstand He Xinjiu's forceful pull and could only sit on the small horse carriage with a stiff face. When Instructor Yuan came, his gaze couldn't help but linger on the two small bodies for a moment, then he asked everyone to gather. After everyone gathered, they began the sword technique assessment in turn. Instructor Yuan's expression didn't show any emotions, nor did he make any comments. He just asked everyone to practice the sword technique in order. After a while, it was He Xinjiu's turn. He Xinjiu walked to the front, took out a sword from her storage ring, and started to draw randomly. The children sneered one after another. This little treasure would definitely lose points. She was simply drawing randomly. He Xinjiu drew randomly a few times, and then said with a smile, "Instructor Yuan, I didn't understand how you drew yesterday, so I just drew randomly a few times." Instructor Yuan didn't say anything. He asked her to go down and let Di Baiming come forward to practice his swordsmanship. Chapter 3477, Points deducted based on ability. Di Baiming was not as thick-skinned as Yun Chuzhou. He did not even step out. He only said coldly, "I don't know how." The children were gloating even more. These two little things did not even step out. These two little things will definitely be deducted a lot of points. Based on this rate of deduction, these two little things will be eliminated very soon. Unexpectedly, Instructor Yuan still didn't say anything and let the other children continue practicing their swordsmanship. Finally, everyone finished practicing. Instructor Yuan glanced at everyone and said, "Except for number 19 and number 20, each person will lose 10 points. Everyone, He Xinjiu, Di Baiming." Immediately, someone asked indignantly, "Instructor Yuan, although the way we practiced might be a little different from what you taught us yesterday, De Bao and Xiao Bao were just randomly practicing. Why did we lose points instead?" Instructor Yuan replied coldly, "Knowing is knowing. Not knowing is not knowing." Number 19 and number 20 at least have the courage to admit that they didn't learn the sword technique. They didn't mess it up like you did. A set of sword technique that was perfectly fine was ruined by you. He Xinjiu felt as if she was cursing a dog in her heart. Fuck, this works. If she had known this would happen, she would have imitated those devilish children and made a few decent gestures. It wasn't easy for her to use her ability to deduct some points, and in the blink of an eye, she had returned to the same starting line. When the children heard Instructor Yuan's words, although they were still indignant, no one said anything. After all, a small arm couldn't twist a thigh, so they could only listen to the instructor's arrangements. The children originally thought that Instructor Yuan would continue to teach them the previous set of sword techniques, but they did not expect that Instructor Yuan would leave without saying anything. Fortunately, the head of the guards at the side said, "You guys have lunch first. There will be a new instructor coming to teach you in the afternoon." He Xinjiu ridiculed in her heart. What kind of trick was this? This was considered a test. There was a new instructor in the afternoon. Crazy. In the afternoon, there was indeed a new instructor. The new instructor was an old man. This old man was even more lazy. He directly threw a few types of herbs to each group and then left. The crowd did not understand and could only carefully observe the herbs thrown to them, in case they could not pass the test the next day. Yun Chuzhou originally planned to bring Di Baiming back to the dormitory, but the strange grass in her dantian was clamoring to eat those herbs. It was Guai Chao. Guai Chao was afraid of Di Baiming, so its clamor was restrained a lot. Yun Chujio saw that the strange grass was so interested, so she moved closer to the little fatty and the others who were holding the herbs. She stretched out her small claws and said, "Give it to me, let this king see." King. Immediately, everyone looked at the little fatty and the others. The little fatty and the others' faces turned red. They felt the mockery and disdain from the other children, but they did not dare to disobey Yun Chujio. They could only hand the herbs to Hei Shinjo. Hei Shinjo looked at the herbs, then shamelessly put them into her storage ring. "I'll take them into the house to have a good look. You guys go and look at the herbs from other groups." Fatty and the others were on the verge of tears. Other groups would never lend them the herbs. They were all eager to have a few less competitors. Hei Shinjo naturally did not care whether Fatty and the others were crying or not. This guy returned to the dormitory and took the few herbs to have a look. He swallowed them all, but he was afraid that he would attract trouble. This guy blinked his eyes and grabbed a few leaves to swallow. Although the Guai Chao was not satisfied, he did not dare to cause any more trouble. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.